I always do that.
So do I.
I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher.
I do.
Swear I gotta get higher now.
I did.
I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider.
I am.
Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher.
I am Bump, aka Sean Cote, which is funny because it's my real name. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of Bookmarks with Bump. All you beautiful bookworms, thank you so much for tuning in. Last week's episode was quite a head turner, which was I really do appreciate that. It's interesting. I was just having this thought run through my head where I was talking in that episode about bringing your best foot forward and always trying to present the best product. And I'm thinking here, like, oh, I should probably address the untypical tiredness that's been in my voice the last couple of weeks. It's been crazy the last few weeks. I have been apartment shopping and just running around like crazy, and it's changed my schedule in such a way that I've been having trouble finding time, which is something that I always say is a wild thing, right? Because if you build a structure and a routine, you'll always have time for the things that you truly desire to do. Um, and still, I still find myself wondering when I'll be able to do the podcast, and here I am, 9 p.m. on a beautiful, freaky Friday the 13th. It's my best friend Dave's birthday, so I just want to give a happy birthday shout out to Dave. I met him while I was in the second grade, and we met through conflict. So never be afraid to stick through the heat of the moment. I met Dave. He moved in down the road at a very young age, and he was about 2 years older than me. And one day I was walking up the street, and he just threw a snowball at me, and there began 22 years of beautiful, wonderful friendship. So happy birthday to Dave. It's Friday the 13th. I've probably looked at 10 or 12 apartments over the last 2 weeks. And there was a point this week where it was every day after work. I was here, I was there, I was all over the place. Running around like a proverbial chicken with my head cut off. And the thing that I'm noticing here is a wicked and wild world. The price range that I'm looking at, I deem to be reasonable, right? I'd like to pay a little bit less than a mortgage for a one-bedroom apartment, just really a bachelor pad where I could set up my podcast and really give myself a chance to spread my wings and get some peace and quiet in my life. And man, when I'm looking in the price range of $1,200 to $1,300 a month, there is not the beautiful upscale offerings that you would think. I mean, of course, I'm not going to have a New York City loft or anything of that nature, but I at least like to have something where things are completely painted. There aren't chips in the wall. There aren't smells that are undesirable in the hallways. But nonetheless, this is the world that we live in. And I wonder what drives up those prices so much. Is it the price of electricity? Is it the price of gas? Or is it just a wicked game that landlords play? It's interesting. Another thing I noticed, actually, towards the back half of this week, because it was a wild... sorry, not wild. Everything's wild this week, of course, as I've mentioned time and time again. But it was a wet and dark week. Just cold rain, a little bit of snow, not much to be desired from somebody like me who loves to be outside. I noticed this while the sun has been shining the last couple of days, that it's a little bit brighter in the wintertime, which is so interesting to me. And I think that's more because of the time of day where the sun is going down. It's a more noticeable time of day on the commute home from work or whatever it is. the sun is absolutely bright. But how bright do you think it is for people who drive planes? Or fly planes, rather? Wow. You can actually hear um, where my brain is at currently with the diction that I'm using, I guess you could say, for a lack of better words. Anyway, I saw a plane flying, and I just noticed how much the light was reflectant off of it. And it was such a bright spot in the sky that it was like a second sun flying through the air. These pilots must feel like Icarus when they're flying during the golden hour. It's got to be a Mayday red hour for them. They're kind of just closing their eyes, not being able to see a thing as they're squinting like I used to do before I got these brand new glasses I have on. So shout out to the optometrist. But yeah, so I noticed that plane, and just the sun has been brighter, so it's something to grab a hold of. Those little things in life that you can be grateful for and thank God for, that you have the opportunity to see. Because here I am moping about whatever the condition of an apartment and the rate of rent, but there's still brightness to every single day. We'll bounce back to the rent and the landlords. It's interesting if they are just running up a scheme how nobody gets pepped. Pepped is a verb that I believe I coined after the discovery of Luigi Mangione. Last week I talked about the United Healthcare CEO that was basically assassinated in broad morning light, broad dusk light. Can we call it that? Excuse me while I have a spot of tea. Nonetheless, in broad dusk light, I mentioned last week how the United Healthcare CEO was gunned down by a masked gunman who had a silencer and the words defend, deny, and depose written on the bullets that were used in the murder. Well, that man was found last week or this week. He was found recently in a McDonald's. I guess the guy loved McDonald's and hated health insurance. I'm not sure how much those two go hand in hand, but nonetheless, Luigi has had his day in court. As of late, Luigi has become quite the legend. This is all of the inner makings of a fantastic movie one day. Luigi Mangione was a PhD graduate from Penn, not Penn State, but Penn University, the Ivy League school. So obviously this guy had quite the mental capabilities. He was seen kind of posting around online about the Ted Kaczynski Unabombing, where he mentioned something that was very thought-provoking and polarizing, to say the least, about how Ted Kaczynski, he can't really support what he did because he maimed innocent people, but at some point, violence is necessary when voices aren't heard. And that is a crazy thought to me. I like to avoid violence at all costs. I don't think it's necessary. I've been violent in my past, and it never really gets you what you want out of a situation. In fact, it can ruin a lot of things that can be resolved. Conflict can always be resolved through word. Conflict, such as a snowball fight, could turn into a friendship if you don't let it escalate to the point of real damage. So I don't really agree with his ideology here. But, I mean, this has been such an interesting thing to follow. He went from 500 followers on X, Twitter, to over 300,000 over the course of the last week. This guy was an avid traveler and surfer, and apparently he broke his back while surfing in Hawaii. And this is probably what sparked the whole deny, defend, depose situation that we've found ourselves in as a society. People are heralding this man as a hero because of what he did, which is a very eye-opening, or should be a very eye-opening situation for healthcare companies, governmental regulations that go into these sort of things, B, us as a society, C, all of these things. It's very interesting for me to see the way that the world is reacting to this. Because at the end of the day, this man is a murderer. And it has all of the makings of a perfect TV show. Think about shows like Breaking Bad. Who are you rooting for? In the beginning, you were rooting for Heisenberg, um, Bryan Cranston's character. His name is escaping. Walter White. I don't know why that name escaped me for some reason. Exhausted once again. Stop making excuses. Be grateful. I'm grateful that I'm tired right now. Let me just stop and say this. I'm grateful that I'm tired. I'm grateful that I have the ability and the capability to seek these opportunities. I'm grateful that I'm not desperate enough to take the first thing that I see. I'm grateful that I'm grateful that I'm willing to go through the travels to make sure that I'm still checking all my boxes day to day. I haven't missed a day in the gym with all of these excuses that I could pile up. All of these things that I'm, let's say, quote, complaining about are actually blessings that I have in my life. And I think if I grasp onto that more and more, I think I could be a lot more outwardly grateful. It's a thought that can escape you from time to time. Here's a perfect example of how it's escaping somebody like me who has the ability to tell you how to look at these situations. It's not always easy to, though. But thinking about how hard I've worked over the past 2 weeks to make sure I could get all of these things done, I think I should work just as hard to remain grateful. Um, Message rant over. We'll continue to Luigi and how maybe society has been conditioned in a way to look at Luigi as a hero or a quote legend. He is taking the form of characters like Walter White or Tony Soprano or Dexter, even, where you're kind of rooting for the bad guy. At the end of the day, yes, these were the main characters of the story. At some point, maybe they had good intentions or good morals behind them, but what they did was bad. Tony Soprano ran a crime family. Walter White made the most potent meth in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and probably is responsible for more deaths than Pol Pot. Dexter is a serial killer. Yeah, he killed bad people, but at the end of the day, he's still a murderer, and that's exactly what Pep Mangione is. Luigi. So my first thread here that I found, because there's been so many on this guy, but this is what's interesting to me, right? So Lawyer Lee has been a lawyer for 30 years. They go on to say, there is a lot more to the Luigi Mangione story than we are being told so far. I am highly concerned about his claim that evidence was planted on him. We'll be looking into this and continuing to report on the case impartially, as all suspects are innocent until proven guilty. Lawyer Lee is a 30-year trial attorney. One huge missing piece of information is, why did Luigi Mangione target United Healthcare's CEO? The state doesn't have proof to motive. The state doesn't have to prove motive, sorry. But an explanation would tamp down rumors and speculation. Mangione had medical problems after surgery, but UHC says they didn't insure him. His family has money, so it's unlikely that they were denied health care. In his notes, Mangione wrote that UHC is the 5th largest corporation in America. Why start with number 5? Police are hinting they have surveillance video of Luigi Mangione after he left New York. He was very careful with trying to stay low profile, avoid cameras, not all that successfully in some cases. The Lieutenant Colonel Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police, where he was caught and captured. Mangione is accused of shooting and killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. McDonald's probably wasn't Luigi's first stop in Altoona, Pennsylvania, Colonel Bivens said. And we know that he has been in Pennsylvania for several days, and so part of that investigation will also focus on trying to retrace his steps. We've already identified businesses, for example, that he frequented in this area, and activities that he engaged in. All right, so Lawyer Lee is kind of not putting things together in a thread. One thread that I did find was by Cod Stranger. Luigi Mangione's court hearing news to keep you updated. And so he had his arraignment in court. He was denied bail due to the fact that he was caught with a gun, $8,000 in American currency and $2,000 in foreign currency. So you can consider him a flight risk. The thread goes on to say Luigi Mangione starts yelling at the media as he is escorted from a police car to court. Completely out of touch. It's an insult to the intelligence of the American people. There's been so many photos released of this guy. It's so sensationalized. He's verified on X. His alleged manifesto was published by Ken Klippenstein. To the feds, I'll keep this short. Now, this is a main focus here. This is a lunatics, I guess. I mean, can you really... How do you look at... And this is what I want to know in the comments, right? How do you look at Luigi Mangione? Because I've had a hard time coping with this. Like, I look at him as sort of a Walter White or a Dexter, where I almost do want to root for him, but you can't call for the murder of people. Like I said, violence isn't the answer. People may think it's necessary, but I don't think it's the answer ever. His manifesto is here. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the indecipherable, must have been handwritten. United is the blank largest company in the U.S. by market cap. Oh, so this is where they talk about the fifth. The fifth largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but as our life expectancy? No. The reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument, but many have illuminated the corruption and greed. Example, Rosenthal, Moore, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Luigi Mangione was then denied bail, and his attorney plans to plead not guilty if charged with assassinating the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. New court order reveals that Luigi Mangione had been denied bail as he fights extradition to New York. Luigi Mangione's roommate says he proposed reading Ted Kaczynski's manifesto to Mangione. It was my selection for our book club. So the roommate is possibly looking for the next CEO to take out. What is this all about? What are they teaching in college? That is insane. One of the first comments here in this thread is, well, everything his manifesto states is sadly totally correct. He will have much support at the trial by the general population. Man, that's a lot to get into. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to dive in. And that comment kind of states it boldly and exactly. Everything that he did say was correct. And that's what makes him this polarizing character. Do we agree with Luigi? Do these people need to be, quote, taken care of? I believe that we should do this through litigation, but in a swift manner. There needs to be more regulatory factors to these types of companies. And the fact that we're the number one healthcare system in the world, right? Well, the number one most expensive, the number one earning healthcare system in the world, but we're number 42 in the list of nations as far as life expectancy is that's really regulatory. Look at the things they put in our foods. We've talked about that in so many past episodes. Look at the things they feed us. Look at the lifestyle they give us. How do you remain safe through this? That is just something you have to work incessantly at. It takes a lot of work to become. How do I say this without sounding pompous or pretentious? I put a lot of work into myself to remain healthy. And even still, with all of the things I do and the food that I eat, the food I stay away from, the choices I make on a day-to-day basis, when so much temptation is readily available for us, it it, it is another full-time job to keep yourself healthy and out of the doctor's office, away from illness, and tip-top magoo, as Joey Diaz would say. Is that the cost of freedom? We always talk about the costs of freedom, right? And we're taxed, we pay taxes. And usually that's the typical thing that people are speaking of when they talk about the cost of freedom or the wars that we fight in. Those are things that people talk about when we talk about the cost of freedom. But is the true cost of freedom the freedom of choice and having to have the ability to make the right choice on a consistent basis? Because one slip up could lead to a slippery slope. Luigi, if you hear this, if you're a bookworm, if you're a listener of the Bookmarks with Bump podcast, I don't know if I support you, but I don't think that I hate you. And what you did could spark some sort of revolution. Hopefully, what you mentioned when you said that these people are out of touch, maybe you did send the right message. Or maybe this will begin another campaign about inclusion. Who knows what's going to happen? I just hope that we move in the right direction and we move away from hurting one another, killing one another. Some would say that the healthcare system is killing millions of people on a year-to-year basis, and that's part of the reason why Luigi has become heralded, why people have a pep in their step when it comes to talking about Luigi Mangione. But there's got to be another way. I don't know. I don't like to think about Brian Thompson's family and what they're having to go through, the strife that Luigi mentioned they're dealing with. Like, he also knew the ramifications of what would happen. He probably knew that he would get caught. He probably knew that it would have a tremendous effect on his family in one way or another. And those are the things that you really have to take account for when you think about committing an act of violence like this. What are you doing to the people surrounding this situation? It's something that's very, very important. It's something that nobody should take lightly. And that's the reason why there's so much conflict around this. You can't just root for the guy without any real change being made. If this causes some sort of change, Luigi became a revolutionary. But if it doesn't, it just continues the downward spiral that society is seeming to build. And that's why I always speak about building the best bubble for yourself. It's a sad reality, but when you look at the world as plainly as it is, you might not want to look at it that much. And that's just kind of why I do the things that I do. I try not to focus on the stuff. I stay away from social media where people are posting all about their lives. I focus more on, I just focus more on the things that are tailored to me. And that's kind of what X or Twitter provides outside of Instagram, Facebook, and all of those other platforms. It's more of a place where you can It's more of a place where you can find what you're looking for rather than let what's looking for you find you. Um, and I think that takes away a lot of stress. And with less stress in your life, you could probably live longer. And since we were on the topic of Luigi's problems with the healthcare system and the life expectancy and all of that, let's bring up a thread I found that could help us live longer. Jimmy McKay tweeted one day, "Sad truth about hard-working fathers. They'll spend 60 plus hours a week working for their family, but they won't get healthy for them. Meanwhile, a quarter of them die from heart diseases. Here are 7 steps to prevent an early death, even if you're too busy." Oh, that's perfect. I talked about being too busy earlier today, so I talked about being too busy all week, but still finding a way to make it done. Let's hear Jimmy's 7 steps. Heart disease is the number 1 killer in America, but it's insulin resistance that causes it. It also causes cancer, diabetes, obesity, the list goes on. And most people don't even know they have it. What is insulin resistance? Insulin is a hormone that allows glucose to enter your cells so they can use it for energy. But with insulin resistance, sugar can't get into your cells, so it builds up in the blood, raising your blood sugar to dangerous levels. This leads to chronic inflammation, which causes fatigue, fat gain, brain fog, and joint pain. Then eventually, the 4 horsemen of chronic disease: heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, cancer. All of these things are linked to insulin resistance, which is something we've spoke about many times on this podcast. How do you know if you're insulin resistant? Here are some common signs: cravings for sugar, excessive belly fat, high blood pressure, difficulty losing weight, and chronic fatigue. Sounds like most Americans. Despite what experts say, this condition is completely reversible. How do I know? We've helped 7 clients reverse insulin resistance, lose 20 to 60 pounds, and get off diabetes meds with this exact blueprint. Number 1 is eat more fiber. Fiber helps to slow the digestion of carbs, lowering the production of insulin to give your system a break. Men get 35 grams daily, and women get 25 grams daily. Eat nutrient-dense plants like split peas, avocados, peas, raspberries, pears, Brussels sprouts, oats, broccoli, coconut, blackberries, artichoke, and lentils. 2 is walk after meals. This lowers post-meal blood sugar spikes. Find ways to make this as attractive as possible. Listen to podcasts or music, watch Netflix if you have to, and start slow. 5 minutes is better than nothing. 3 is to manage carb intake, fewer carbs, less blood sugar. Less blood sugar, lower insulin. Low carb interventions alone pull people off of hundreds of units of insulin in days to weeks. Not good for the pharma. Shout out Luigi. Limit carbs to below 100 grams a day. Eat 3 meals a day and get 50 grams of protein at each meal. 30 if a female. I still go with 50 if you're a female. The more protein, the better. Helps with feeling satisfied. What is that word? Satiety. Satiety. 2, no snacks. That minimizes blood sugar variability. More protein, more muscle, and muscle is a sponge for blood sugar. 5 is to lift weights. You don't need to dedicate your life to the gym to reverse IR. You just need to do enough to trigger muscle building. 2 to 3 times a week is enough if you pick proper exercises, use a full body split, and train to failure. Really rip into those muscle fibers. 6 is to prioritize sleep and sunshine. Sleep lowers cortisol and helps sugar metabolism. Sunshine provides vitamin D and enhances insulin sensitivity. Make sure to get 7.5 or more hours of sleep, 5 to 10 minutes of morning sun, and 30 minutes of total sun time daily. Here are 7 tips for better sleep. Daily movement, no caffeine afternoon. Practice 4-7-8 breathing. 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, 8-second exhale. Avoid naps after 2:30 p.m. and black blue light before bed. Wake and sleep at the same time daily. Create a sleep cave, silent, dark, and cold. 7 is time-restricted eating, like an intermittent fasting period. TRE is the biggest level lever to improve insulin sensitivity. You start with 12-hour fasting windows. Oh, that sleep talk, baby, sleepy. That's probably not a good sign if I'm yawning on my own podcast. Anyhow, TRE, time-restricted eating, is the biggest lever to improve insulin sensitivity. Start with a 12-hour fasting window, gradually increase to 14 to 16 hours. Eat the biggest meals in the daytime. This teaches your body how to use fat as a fuel source again. Most guys try to lose fat through restrictive diets, hours of cardio, and quick fixes, then they all gain it back. I can relate. I can relate to that. After my first, I talk about this all the time. After my first half marathon, I really went crazy with some sugary snacks, and that just opened up the floodgates. And from there, I ballooned back up, regardless of my running and everything. It's taken me now years to kind of push back against that insulin resistance and get back into the athletic shape that I was in years ago. And here I am now, just ripped, prime, and ready to tear. Hard work pays off. Consistency pays off. All of these things that I talk about on a weekly basis on this podcast. And this is exactly why I talk about them, is because it works. I'm the example of how it works. I'm not the perfect example. Like I've mentioned many times, there is no perfect example except for Jesus, but still, it works, and I'm proof that it works. And this was my purpose, to spread that message. Really think about your insulin resistance. When you eat, make sure it's spaced out. I try to eat 3 to 4 hours in between meals. That's kind of the best type of window where you let your insulin come back down before you spike it again. Because every time you eat, you do have insulin. It's not about avoiding insulin spiking. It's about avoiding leaving it in your bloodstream. One thing that's in my bloodstream right now is the Rams and the 49ers.
Here we go! Buck, here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Yeah, here we go!
Yeah, here we go. Ballin' with Bump is back, and it's Week 15, and last night the Rams and the 49ers kicked off a Week 15 NFC West divisional matchup, which is a tight division right now. Currently, the San Francisco 49ers are 6-8 behind the 6-7 Arizona Cardinals, who are behind the 8-6 Los Angeles Rams, and Seattle leads the pack at 8-5. Last night there was more drama than touchdowns. We'll start there with Devondre Campbell coming under fire after refusing to go into the game. Dre Greenlaw returned to action after being out since the Super Bowl last year with a torn Achilles or ACL, something in his leg that started with an A. Can't quite put my finger on it currently. However, he returns back into action and has an impact on the defense, holding the Rams to 12 points after going out last week and putting up 40-plus against the Bills in a shootout of a game. This was more of a back-and-forth kicking match. And that's really what it was. The Rams were held to 12 points, but they still pulled out the victory in a 12-6 win over the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers were kind of marred by, I don't know whether it was the rain or a case of drops. Even with Brandon Ayuk coming back into the fold this season, things weren't quite the same. They did get a big win last week against the Bears. Without Christian McCaffrey in the lineup, who's out for the rest of the season. But they didn't get a lot of help from anywhere else on the offense. Brock Purdy went 14 for 31. Now, like I had mentioned, it had been raining. But look at this. There were 31 targets and only 14 receptions. George Kittle dropped 3 targets. Juwan Jennings dropped 7 passes. Isaac Guerrero, the rookie running back who stepped in for Christian McCaffrey, he caught all 4 of his targets. Ricky Pearsall caught 1 of 4, and Deebo Samuel dropped 4 passes. Deebo Samuel totaled 3 catches for 16 yards. Hey, that's my birthday. Nonetheless, when I watched this game last night and I sit here and watch it back today, you kind of just see sloppy play all around from the offenses. Uh, Mainly the 49ers offense, though. Matt Stafford really didn't get a lot of chances in the first half. It went 4 for 12, and then they kind of went to the running game, which was successful throughout the night with Kyron Williams rushing for 108 yards on 29 carries. Did not make it into the end zone, and his longest rush was 10 yards. However, Puka Nacua, with his 7 receptions and 97 yards, stood out against the pack. And to me, he's standing out as like, this kid is quite possibly a generational talent. This is his second season. He's dealt with some injuries this season, but when he plays, he is the go-to guy. He makes unbelievable catches, and it looks like he's just running violently, and he's ready for impact. He wants impact when he's out there running, when he's out there doing his job. He's not one to shy away from it, and he's just so incredibly strong. Last night, he made an incredible catch against the defender's helmet. He pinned the ball against the back of the defender's helmet, who had him plastered, and took it all the way to the ground and did not drop it, did not let up. This guy is one of a kind, right? The Mormon boy out of BYU, Puka Nacua, is one of them ooses who can really get it going on. Puka Nacua is kind of going to be that motor for the LA Rams, especially if they have a chance to take over the top spot from the Seattle Seahawks. Another notable thing about this game is I think this is Sean McVay's only second victory against Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. One of those games coming last year when Carson Wentz was starting. Interesting thing here, on 3 targets, Cooper Kupp had 0 receptions for 0 yards. Cooper Kupp went first in a lot of people's drafts. Cooper Kupp was quite possibly the best wide receiver in the league last year, going for the Triple Crown, and this year just not really picking it up as much as he had in years past. He ran 4.6 miles last night, and that equated to 0 catches, 0 receptions, and a lot of unhappy fantasy football owners. Anyhow, the Rams would kick 3 field goals in the fourth quarter, move down the field, win the game. 49ers are probably looking for a new backup linebacker, with looking for the best way to part ways with Devondre Campbell after his antics last night. I mean, George Kittle came out and said, I hope I never play with anybody like that ever again. So I can't really see his time lasting. As we go through the schedule here, we'll start with Kansas City taking on Cleveland. In Cleveland, at the Dog Pound, Kansas City is favored by 4.5, and they have not covered a spread in 7 games. There's a stat going around right now that's really just probably out there to put some more chips on these guys' shoulders, as if they're not good enough, where no team that's gone on a 7-game against the spread losing streak has ever won the Super Bowl. And that's really what the Chiefs are set out to do, to win back to back to back. The first team to ever three-peat in the National Football League. Cleveland is in a bit of a place where they have all of the intangibles to get it done, but do they? Will it happen? I just see Kevin Stefanski getting outcoached by Andy Reid here. Will Kansas City cover the spread? I don't know. But this seems like a perfect spot for Kansas City to get its offensive legs underneath them. Speaking of offensive legs, you have the Cincinnati Bengals, who continuously put up 30 points a game. Joe Burrow is the leading passer in the league, and still they can't string together a win. They're favorites over the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. Tennessee brings a tough defense with the likes of Roger McCreary. He'll be probably tasked with guarding Jamar Chase throughout the game. Jamar Chase is just having a career year. So is Joe Burrow, and so is Trey Hendrickson, who leads the league in sacks. But still, the Bengals are having a hard time stringing together wins, and I don't see them getting into the playoffs, especially with this AFC North that's running wild, brother. Washington Commanders take on the New Orleans Saints in Jake Hayner's first start. All all 4 of these 1:00 games, they all have a commonality where the favorite is the team that's on the road that week. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders go down to New Orleans. Daniels pulls out the win, 100%. Baltimore is a 15-point favorite against New York right now in New York at MetLife Stadium. The Ravens, this seems like a great game for the Ravens and Lamar to kind of also, just like the Chiefs, get their offensive legs underneath them and try some new things out. This is a team you could definitely try some things out against. The Giants don't have much going for them. Tommy DeVito is going to get the start. Drew Lock has a heel injury, so that'll be an interesting matchup. The how you doing against the how you doing? Dallas Cowboys and Carolina Panthers face off in Carolina, where Carolina is a 3-point favorite. Bryce Young favored over Cooper Rush. And I think that's a bit of the books paying respect to Bryce Young and how he's turned his season around, almost practically turned his career around this year after getting benched for Andy Dalton. The Jets take on Jacksonville, a get-back spot for the Jets. Mac Jones starting in Jacksonville. Jacksonville not really being able to produce much of anything this season, which is a surprise due to how they were touted the last couple of years. They're just not living up to the hype. Miami takes on Houston in Houston. This is a game that Miami needs if they want to stay in the playoff hunt. This is a game that Houston needs if they want to remain atop the AFC South. This will be a good game to watch here. The Colts play in Denver. Denver is favored in this game. Bo Nix going up against Anthony Richardson. 2 quarterbacks kind of in their first campaign where we see a bit of an upward trend. Bo Nix starting out kind of slow his rookie season, but Sean Payton sticking with him, giving him the chance. On the other hand, you have Anthony Richardson, who was benched this season due to his play and then put back in the game due to Joe Flacco's play. If footsteps Flacco was going off, who knows if Anthony Richardson would be back in. But since he's been back in, he has withheld from turnovers and gone 2-1. So we'll see if Anthony Richardson can keep the streak alive. The Buffalo Bills, coming off of that tough loss against the Rams last week, go on to play the Detroit Lions. The Bills and the Rams put up like 87-something points. The Lions leading scoring offense in the league with 31-plus points a game. The Lions will be a 2.5-point favorite against the Bills, and I think this is a great matchup to watch. This is a potential Super Bowl matchup. You know, we have a lot of teams that are we have teams that are going to be new here. Everybody wants to talk about the Chiefs and their probability to three-peat. I think that the Bills have a great chance to make it to the Super Bowl this year. Even without star names on their team, Josh Allen's been putting them on his back and making it happen night after night, week after week. Sorry, this isn't the NBA yet, but week after week, Josh Allen is he's surpassing all of the Bills' rushing records. He's surpassing all of the passing records. And, I mean, the guy's undeniable. He's a stud. Jared Goff becoming a stud of his own. You have Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. They have weapons all over the field that have names. The Lions team has become a bit of a household name, and you have a coach who's beloved with Dan Campbell playing against a coach who's constantly questioned in Sean McVay. What will prevail in this matchup? That'll be something to watch here. Another thing to watch is the Battle of the Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is taking on Philadelphia, where Philadelphia is favored by 5.5 points. You have New England taking on Arizona. Arizona's favored by 6 in a game that they need, because this NFC West, this division's not going to be sealed until, I'm assuming, a week or two before the season is over. Tampa Bay plays the Chargers, which is going to be a hard-hitting, physical, smash-mouth game. And then rounding out Sunday on Sunday Night Football, you have a matchup that has produced so much drama over the past decade, really. You think about the coin toss game where Matt Hasselbeck says, "We'll take the ball and we're going to win." And he threw a touchdown, except the touchdown was a pick six, and the Packers pulled out that victory. yeah, the Packers and the Seahawks always put on an exciting game. Green Bay is favored by 2.5 on the road against the NFC West leading team. I'm sure they watched the Rams win and feel the pressure. So that pressure is either going to make coal or it's going to make diamonds. Let's see what happens. And we have a doubleheader on Monday again. Another one of these where you got to set up 2 TVs to watch both games starting at 8 p.m. The Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings face off in an FC North divisional matchup where the Vikings are favored by a whole touchdown in the middle of the street. You could tune into ABC or ESPN Plus to watch the Vikings and their questionable offense over the last couple weeks take on Caleb Williams and his questionable offense with the Chicago Bears, who got pounced on by the 49ers last week. And then to end that Week 15 slate, you have the Falcons taking on the Raiders. And over the last 4 games, Kirk Cousins has thrown 8 interceptions, and that Kirk Cousins deal is not looking as good as it did in the beginning of the season. This is a game where he has to get back, and it's great because it's a team that I think he can get back against. So I'm excited for that game, actually, and I'm excited to see if Kirko can put the chains back on and walk into the Raiders' trap and take over their trap. And speaking of taking over a trap, I hope y'all take over the comment section on this episode and let me know your thoughts on Luigi. Is he putting a pep in your step, or is he going down the wrong pipes? That's what we need to question when it comes to Luigi Mangione and his actions that have transpired over the course of the last few weeks. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for engaging and interacting with the podcast. It's some of my favorite things to see when I pop into the Creators app from time to time and see what new ears my voice is falling upon. As always, give a like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review. I appreciate all your time and taking time out of your day to listen to me ramble about what's going on in the world today. And as always, it's all love. God bless. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bookmarks.
I'm a night rider. I've been riding a wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I've been riding a wave like I surf. I've been leaning in and out of work. I could show you what it's worth. Money to the ceiling. I started at the dirt. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear to God I get higher, man.